Hey there everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening depending on when you're watching this. Again, in my case, good morning. Alright, so today we're going to be making a really fun dish. And best of all, it's something you can definitely make when you're on a really low budget. Today we're going to be making bread. Well, more specifically flatbread, but yeah, I said bread. Because bread isn't something people usually make where I'm from at their own home. You know, because people think making bread super complicated or that it's really such a hassle. But I promise you, this is probably gonna be the simplest recipe that I'm ever going to teach on this whole show. And you know what? This flatbread was actually my gateway to the world of bread. So hopefully it'll be your gateway too to a world of more delicious and more fancy breads. But yeah, you know what? Let's just see how this goes, and I hope you guys enjoy that. And again, I said this is the simplest recipe that I'm ever gonna teach you guys. You know what? Instead of telling you how easy it is, I'd rather just show you. So, let's get cooking. Alright, so for this extremely simplified version of flatbread, we're only gonna need 3 ingredients. Now we have about a cup of flour. Here I'm using all-purpose flour, mostly because of availability reasons, and it's probably the easiest kind of flour that you're gonna find in random stores or supermarkets, and mostly because of the name itself being, well, all-purpose. So you can find multiple uses for it, but feel free to experiment with different kinds of flour though, like bread flour or even cake flour. Again, this is your food adventure, and you have every right to explore your own world of flavors. After that, we have some salt for taste, and last but not least, roughly around half a cup of some good old-fashioned water. And that's it. Simple as that. Now, the first thing that we're gonna want to do is place the flour on a clean working area. After that, we're going to use our 2 fingers to make a nice little well in the middle of our hill of flour. In this well, we are going to carefully pour in our water, in which we'll put in about 2 to 4 pinches of salt, and you can adjust that to your preference. Now, please make sure that you don't overfill that well like I did. I did it because, well, I wasn't really being very smart here. But then again, it's normal to make a few oopsies here and there in the kitchen, and as well as in life. The important thing is that we learn from our mistakes. And in this case, you should probably learn from mine, so that we can grow and become even better in the future. So if this went according to plan, you're supposed to use your fork to slowly incorporate the surrounding flour into the liquid until you make a shaggy dough. But if your wall breaks like mine did here, it's fine. You know, don't panic. You can simply try to get all the water back into the mounded dough, and it'll still pretty much end with a shaggy dough, like this. Once that mixture becomes more solid, it's time for my absolute favorite part of the bread making process. Besides, well, eating it of course, which is kneading the dough. To knead the dough, all you need to do, see what I did there? Is to fold the dough into itself and press it together again. The reason why we're doing this is to work the gluten in the dough so that it becomes nice and smooth and strong. Oh, by the way, If you feel like the dough is still too wet and sticky, all you need to do is apply a little bit more flour. And if the dough gets too tough or dry, just do the opposite and add a bit of water. Just don't forget, it's easier to add flour than to add liquid. So just try to keep kneading the dough and stick with it for a few minutes and check before you add anything. Now you can either do the fold and press technique here, or you can try this thing I call the V, where I just basically fold and press the dough using this V motion with my hands. Of course, you can just stick with whatever's more comfortable for you. After kneading the dough for about 10 to 15 minutes straight, yeah, it's a great workout, I know. We're just going to cup our hands together and use it to form the dough into this nice and smooth little ball. We are then going to get some cling wrap and wrap it around the dough and give the dough around 30 minutes to an hour to rest. Now the reason we're letting it rest is so that the developed gluten strands have enough time to relax and become softer and much easier to work with. Plus, after 10 to 15 minutes of straight up kneading, you're probably gonna want a break too. So let's just enjoy that well-deserved break, shall we? 30 minutes to about an hour later. Now that our dough is nice and rested, all we need to do now is shape it into a log, then cut it in half cause it may be too long for the workspace. Set the other half aside, and then once you form a nice equal log with the other half, we will then begin to cut the dough into about a thumb or half of a thumb's length depending on the size of your available pan. In my case, I'm using a 6-inch pan, so I'm just going to use about half of a thumb's length. You can either use a knife to cut the dough or a bench scraper like I'm using here. It's honestly up to you or whatever's available. The only reason I'm using a bench scraper is so that I don't cut up my mat. Once that dough is nice and cut up, take one of the pieces, form it like a little marshmallow, and place it on a well-floured surface. Then sprinkle a bit more flour on top of the piece of dough so it doesn't stick. We are then going to take the palm of our hand and squish the piece of dough so that it forms this rough circle. After squishing the dough, we're going to take a floured rolling pin and roll it about half the length of the dough, then spin that dough about 25 degrees, then continue to roll the pin halfway. We will repeat this process until it creates this nice, thin, rustic looking sorta circle. Now we continue to do this with the rest of the dough pieces, and we're finished the moment all of the dough pieces have been formed. Once you're done, it should look a little something like this. Pro tip: before you stack the pieces on top of one another, make sure to sprinkle a bit of flour in between them so that they don't stick to one another. And now it's finally time to cook the dough. We're going to take our pan and place it on top of our stove over a medium to high heat. Once your pan is nice and hot, all you have to do is simply lay the dough flat on the pan and wait. You'll know that it's time to flip when the dough starts to brown a bit. So once brown parts start to form, you can either use a spatula to flip it like a pancake or toss it, whatever's more fun for you. Now once that other side has finished browning, your dough has now magically transformed into this delicious piece of flatbread. Just remember to set it aside to cool down a bit first because it's gonna be really hot. I suggest cooling it on a cooling rack, or maybe even on one of those wire metal things you can find in your oven that look like a cooling rack. But if you don't have either, I guess as a last resort, you can use those sieves as long as it's any place where the bread can breathe, because if you cool it on a flat surface, the excess heat would actually create moisture and make your flatbread sorta wet and soggy. And we don't want that now, do we? Unless of course you're into that sort of thing, but no judging. Also, the same principle applies to stacking up your pieces of still very hot flatbread. So, watch out for that. Once your flatbread is nice and warm and probably won't burn off your tongue, it's best consumed immediately at peak deliciousness. And that's it! Congratulations! You just made bread! Give yourself a round of applause.
Good job. So proud of you. Alright, now you can do almost anything you want to this bread. You can put some jam in it, you can put some peanut butter in it, you can put some chocolate in it, you can make your own little makeshift taco or burrito by putting some vegetables and meat, you can make your own little makeshift shawarma wrap. You know what? The limit of your food is only the limits of your imagination. And again, it's your world of flavor. So you go out there and you explore that world. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this recipe. And again, I really hope this is your gateway to the world of bread, of making bread at home. Because trust me, it's so fulfilling. It feels so great. It's absolutely fantastic. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And I hope you guys enjoy the food. And never forget, sometimes it's not always about the food. But most of the time, it's about the person that you're making it for. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys love the food. And I hope you guys enjoy eating that food that we just created together. Thank you guys so much again for watching. And I hope you guys continue to enjoy the next videos to come. Bye!